Hey guys, I'm in here, and today's video I really want to discuss about the nature of really thinking about what it is that we need to set boundaries with. And what it's like, if you've grown up in an environment that has created a lot of problems for you, and you wonder why you are in a situation that you're in, you can't always think that it's always your fault either. When you've grown up in a very difficult environment, if you have narcissistic parents particularly, and who made your life a living hell, it's really about them more than it's about you. If you don't look at their past, you were never able to progress in your own life a lot of times. And this is what I had to understand when it came to my own lifestyle, and when it came to really transitioning out of and break out of these patterns. Is it easy? No, but you have to look at the past to understand the nature of why you're in the present to move forward in the future. So this is something I had to understand, especially when I have a parent who is very, very needy, who needs everything to be her way, and she expects you to progress on her terms. And if it doesn't work according to her plans and her will, she will have a tantrum. This is why a lot of times it's like playing the game Minesweeper. It's kind of like you're in this grid box, okay? And this grid box pretty much tells you the numbers and the amount of bombs that are near those numbers. And you have to particularly figure out where those bombs are in that grid by using the numbers that are given to you as clues. And because of that, the grid is basically there to help you to decipher, okay, how do I flag it? So you right click on the mouse to decipher where the bomb is located. One wrong click, boom, the game is over. And that's pretty much what it's like living with a narcissist. They don't make your life easy. They make your life a living hell. And therefore, they make you basically produce you to be very infantilized, especially if you have grown up with if you have another sibling. You often see this if you have one or two siblings, you have three kids, if you're like a third sibling, if the first and second, first and the last are always favored, and the middle child always feels like a lost child. But there's different aspects of this whole dynamic, but you gotta look at the family dynamics as well. So I'm the oldest, and therefore being the oldest, I always felt like I was being infantilized by everybody else. Like I was acting mature or acting like my age or whatever the case may be. But then again, it was just very difficult because when your mother is trying to control every aspect of your life, it was the power and the control. That power and control basically made me rebel to the point where I had to understand the nature of what it is that I was trying to produce as my own independent self. So growing up without that constructive way of understanding nature, because rules constantly changed. It never was consistent. So the lack of consistency that was in the house, the lack of consistency that I felt, and therefore I didn't feel secure. This is why I always struggle with this. And because I've grown up with the family dynamics who didn't really tell the truth a lot of times, I'm not saying I'm perfect in this either, but at least I'm willing to admit to it. It's very hard to have that dynamic where we could come together as a family and talk about things openly and honestly, because you can't do that in a family dynamic that has with pathologies. So I had to understand this because I had struggled with this with a lot of anger problems. I went through therapy. Because my mom always told me that there was something wrong with me. I wasn't opening up as much, when really the problem was her. And the problem is when you're dealing with narcissistic parents, they will never admit mostly covertly, will not admit that there is a problem that they are feeding into. What they mostly want to feed into is the nature of what they're doing that is good. But they don't want to feed into the nature that they also feeding the negative side to the situation. It's causing the problem in the first place. And therefore, it's kind of hard to love someone particularly when love is conditional. I did not understand the nature of unconditional love, because unconditional love was basically used as a dangle and a carrot, It's like trying to win that golden prize, but it doesn't exist. So that is something that I had to understand. And so what I had to understand is the nature that growing up in an Asian culture or growing up second generation American, like it was very hard to really produce this, understand where my parents are coming from. I know both my parents are 8 years apart. My mother married very young. Therefore, she was trying to use that past in the present situation, create the same scenarios based upon her past. And therefore, instead of actually helping me grow as an individual and become the best individual that I can be, she just used what she knew and utilized that as her plan B, therefore causing the situation we're in today. And I told her that's not gonna work. You see how this is backfiring on you constantly, but they don't care about what backfires. They expect that the plans work out accordingly to what they want. And I explained this to some of my friends who have multiple children or who are in the same similar situation as I am, who have the same my past, who can help them, because my past is a story to them. So look, this is what I'm seeing. This is the dynamics of what's going on in your family. This is what I'm going to share with you so you can go past them, go beyond this, so you can change the scenario around. But a lot of times when you've been married for over a decade, marriages get stagnant. The reason why is because they're repetitive and redundant to the point where they expect things to go their way. It's like children in adult bodies. They don't change. Adults don't really know how to compromise very well. It's because they're stuck in that old childhood mentality. This is what I'm trying to teach my own kid too. He's 5, but sometimes I feel like, God, he looks like me. It's like the karmic version of me. And I'm like, karma's biting me in the ass right now. But it does happen because we are not taking responsibility as adults for our own past in some way too. So that's something I had to understand. Like, okay, now that I'm an adult, I'm trying to change my past into present, and I'm trying to change everything around because the damage that my parents have done to me has caused a lot of issues in my life. So now where do I go from here? This is when you have to start from ground zero. This is where you have to realize the nature of, okay, I need to change my mindset and everything. Is this easy? No. If you look over my previous videos, I still struggle with this because I don't know what to do sometimes. And every plan that I have made, sometimes it doesn't always work out. But I had to understand the nature that they were limited in their own resources too, which is not a good way to go about this because there are plethora of information if they started looking within themselves first. But because they don't want to look within themselves that they are the cause of the problem, they want everybody else to be the problem in their own story. This can be a problem. It's like when people say this, because I saw this on YouTube, on one of the YouTube shorts, that a lot of people, I'm paraphrasing, a lot of people play the victim in situations and make you the villain. The reason is because the fact that they don't want to make themselves look like the villain when they are the villain in this scenario. So we need to be very careful with that too. So what I had to really take a good look at is not my parents, but look at their past situations. When my mother married my dad very young, often the case is the scenario is my dad followed the same patterns of behaviors as his younger brother, creating the situation they're in now. And that is often the case because the fact that my dad was not secure in who he is. You often see a lot of hints and clues in your own lifestyle based upon their past and what they have used. And whatever they use, they think it was going to work again. It's not going to work again. This is what I had to understand. Like, oh my gosh, that is the truth. I recollect that. And a lot of times, parents need to understand this, that you can't use the same tactics thinking it's going to make a difference down the road. It's not. And when I saw a little bit here and there, my dad was basically a doormat to the needs and wants of my mother. And because my mom is a very entitled woman, it can be very hard for him to set those boundaries with her, just so she doesn't have to start a fight. See, a lot of men do this because they don't want to argue with them and they don't want to deal with the bullshit with their wives. They just give whatever they want. And you wonder why women become this is why women become entitled people. They feel quite entitled. It's because they don't have to work for it, because it's going to be just given to them. And this is how a lot of young girls see the situation in scenarios, and therefore think that is okay to do. So we have to be very clear about that. We have to be very clear about what is really going on, and be very clear that this scenario is not okay, especially for young girls to think it's okay for a man to just pay for whatever they want. And men need to set better boundaries with the women in their lives, because some men are not going to tolerate that bullshit. And that is something I had to understand. Like, my parents don't really love each other. They act like they're in love with each other. They're not. It's just a facade that they put on, and you can tell when someone is in love with someone or they're not. And a lot of times it's a facade that they put on just so they can just go throughout the day. This is why I got out of my own relationship, because I realized the nature that I wasn't really in love with the person. But what about the kid? Well, shouldn't the kid have a father? Yeah, the kid should have a father. But if the father wants to participate in the kid's life, fine, do so. But that doesn't mean I have to be with the father. This is why people have to really decipher what's good for them and what's good for the kid and what's good for, the parents. Because if you don't really think about all those scenarios altogether, what often ends up, it detriments the kids down the road. And there comes my kid right now, who's going to interrupt me on my video. Want to say hi?
Hi.
What are you doing?
Are you?
Close the door.
Where are you going?
I gotta go to work later on. Alright? So, going back to my topic here, I'm going to edit it out a little bit, is really understanding the nature of really seeing the situation. And I told my mother this too, like, you know what, if it wasn't for dad, if you didn't marry dad, you have nothing in the end. A lot of times when people go into legal marriages, it's because out of a need, not out of a want. And because of the fact that people don't, subconsciously, they think, oh, this is what I want, this is what I want. No, it's not. It's what you actually need. And I told some of my friends this, the nature of what marriage is becoming. It's because the nature of the statutes of the legality of the situation, that the women gets half the stuff based upon the legal documentation that they sign, that you both sign, that you get half the shit that he or she owns. And this can be a problem down the road. And because of this legality situation, the court system is not favorable in many cases. It's going to be favorable towards the women. And because of the unfairness of the statutes of the legal system, it can be very difficult for men to understand the nature of what's happening, like for the men to get what they deserve. And because it seems like the nature, it's easier to stay than actually leave, oftentimes create this havoc in the lifestyles of the men, that they realize that, you know what, I don't even know who I really married to. Because you don't half the time. Half the time you go into relationships, you do not know who the fuck you get married to. The reason why is you get married to is because out of feelings of a situation that you think is right for you. You think you know that you know a person, you think that's who you want to marry to, but in reality, when you get married and you stay together for a long time, you're going, I don't know who I'm married to. I don't know what it is that I really want. And a lot of my guy friends who are married come to me for relationship advice because the nature of the situation that they're in. And I think then you gotta go back to basic. Why did you get married? Why did you get married to that person? Because when you understand the nature of that question, you understand, and everything will fall into place. A lot of people don't marry, like I said, don't marry out of love. It's out of a need. And it's a subconscious part of the brain that processes over time that constantly puts you in that position of a survival coping mechanism. And that survival coping mechanism in the part of the brain is the one that needs, and especially women, know how to get to that man real quickly. Because as long as that woman gets what she wants to survive on, they pray and they leech and they make sure that the man does what the woman wants. It's basically not love. This is why a lot of marriages are very, very, very shallow to this day too. It's because the fact that a lot of these people don't marry for the right reasons. We still go back to thousands of years ago and we still see those things. Look at what happened thousands of years ago when women had to marry a man during Jesus' time, had to marry a man just to survive. you know, because women are lesser than men, and we still have that mentality to this day. We still do. I'm like mind boggled by this. I'm like, dude, we have evolved so much over the years. We do not always have to rely on a man. If you want a man to be part of you, then let them be part of your life. I like being alone because it works for me. I'm not saying for everybody, but it works for me. I don't have to argue with anybody. I don't have to discuss about anything. I can do things when I want, freely and willingly, as much as I want and how I want to do it. See, when you're in a partnership, you have to come to equal terms and equal understanding. But the thing is, if you didn't grow up in that kind of environment and you always went against things with your partner and butt heads constantly, this is what I've grown up with, you are basically doing the opposite. My mom was emotionally immature. She's still very emotionally immature. And when you're dealing with emotionally immature parents, both of them have a sense of wounding, so much wounding. That wound is what's causing to erupt and coming out into your own children, because you both came out not on a solid foundation. It came out from a wounded soul, you know? So whatever you haven't healed, whatever you haven't dealt with, you end up detrimenting your own children down the road because of the unmet wounds that yet wasn't healed. And this is what I will show you more stories down the road. But this is something I had to mention. I had to mention that with my own mother. I had to mention that with my family dynamics. This is what I'm telling you, like why people don't respect each other. They do not understand the nature of marriage, you know? They see things, they see movies, they see, you know, we tend to fantasize what marriage ought to be. There are times I have done too. Don't get me wrong. It's all happy-go-lucky and all of that bullshit thing that you see on TV and what you see in marriages in front of your friends or whatever the case may be. But when things hit rock bottom, that's when the real, you know, that's when the real struggle begins. And I've seen a lot of my guy friends, when during the pandemic hit, they came to me for advice about this because they saw they would look at it, I'm like, yeah. Basically, she married you because of the security and the security that you're going to bring to her. It was never really about the love nature of the situation. Now you see her true colors. What are you going to do about it now? I was being very honest with the situation, because when you start seeing these patterns and you start seeing that the nature of what's really going on within 10 plus years, and you've lost yourself in the process, you never knew who you were in the beginning. So what makes you think that you're going to marriage thinking that you're like going to be able to know yourself when you're in that marriage? When you don't know who you really are before you go in the marriage, then how are you going to know yourself when you're in that marriage? It doesn't make sense. So this is why I tell people not to know someone. Even the science have determined by studies, there's 172 days for a man to decipher if they want to be with that person. Yet 172 days is not enough to understand who know that person. It's like having 100 days. And I'm like, you don't know that person very well. That's not who you want to be with for the rest of your life. No, you're just based upon infatuation that you see what you like from that given moment, but you don't really know the person. This is why a lot of women are a lot much slower in getting relationships than men a lot of times. Because we see the nature, the economy of what's really going on. I'm not saying men are dumb, no. But men have a tendency to think differently than women do. So let's put that in perspective. So the reason why I'm so keen on this is because you need to know your foundation, and you need to know when to say no to things. You know why people cheat? It's because they marry the person they know they were not really supposed to marry to. But they marry them anyway because they think that there was nothing better down the road for them. And then they cheat, they go behind their wives' back, and because a lot of times people marry similar to their mothers or parents or whatever the case may be. And they find those qualities about their mothers and that spouse, and therefore they hope that they will get the same results. But reality is, that is not how it really works. I don't even need to be married to understand this whole nature, okay? I can see from all different perspectives. I've been with my ex for 3-4 years, and I realized the nature that, no, this is not what I want anymore. And I just knew, this is not it. So, and I realized if I stayed in that relationship for so long, I would have gotten myself more miserable. I would have not been able to get myself out of it. If I did stay, and I'm like, get out as soon as you can. My gut was saying, get out. It was screaming, get out now. It was screaming from the bottom of my gut. So I did. People, listen to your freaking gut. Listen to your intuition. It is there for a reason. The reason why it's there is because the fact that it's trying to teach you and let you know something isn't right. But because people ignore those intuitions, I've done it too, ignore those intuitions, therefore get stuck in a situation that they have, and the consequences are dire. Do people like that? No. And therefore ruin their children's lives down the road because the fact of what they have not dealt with. See, parents' sins are passed on to their children by default, because the parents have not dealt with their own bullshit, which created children in the first place. That created the children in the first place. You're not in love. You're more in that infatuation. And in that infatuation, you call it love, but that's not the same thing. And that woman needed someone for security purposes and financial security and purposes. Therefore found it. This is why a lot of people, this is why I'm so passionate about this, because I don't want people to make the same mistakes. This is time to wake up. It's time to wake up society. I'm not saying like you shouldn't love someone, but when you know that person isn't right for you and your gut's telling you, you can love them from afar. You don't have to marry them. So I'm telling my friend Chris, like I know, like I think he was trying to find someone to partner with or whatever the case may be. I'm like, that's not with me. I just do it with him. He's because I'm very upfront and direct and straightforward, but he's going to recreate the same past with his ex with me again, and it's not going to go well. And I know this because I'm starting to see certain patterns of behaviors that he does, and I realized that we're not going to go any further than that. Sorry, so I rejected him like that because the fact, not because out of spite, it was more the fact that he has to deal with himself. I told people, my guy friends, this: 2 years. Give yourself fucking 2 years to be alone, get to know yourself, enjoy your time, go to Hawaii, go to different places, check things out before you settle. Like, be in a quiet place alone. But so many people are afraid to be alone is because of the voices in their own heads. But that's when you need it the most.
Well,
yeah.
You have to let me.
That's why I have a hard time doing videos, especially with a small kid in the house, because he is home from school today. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. He's home from school today. He was having really bad diarrhea and just stomach issues. But before I go, I want to put this into perspective. Sit down and start looking at yourself. Look at your core as to why you get into these relationships. Why is it that these relationships are impacting you? What is going on that's causing these relationships to occur? The reason why a lot of these people don't want to admit to it is because they have inner needs that they're not fulfilled, and therefore expecting everybody else to fulfill it for them, causing them to be in a situation where they have all these different, because they're not willing to search within. And this becomes a lot of problems with a lot of men, because a lot of insecurities are coming out openly because of the lack of security they feel as men. Men don't feel as secure as they used to be because of the fact that they are being taken for granted, or they feel as though they can't take care, they don't feel like they are good enough. And that's not the case at all. I told my friend Chris the same thing. I'm like, dude, like, you be open and honest with me on what's going on so we can discuss about this, because you know what, right now I am going to tell you this is what's going to happen, and this is what's going to happen down the road in the near future if you don't take care of this. If you're two girls, think about them, think about what they are dealing with, and you having more of a feminine energy you have a tendency to be a doormat. And I told him exactly what I'm telling you right now. Like, dude, you gotta stop doing that. Set those boundaries. Dude, Be more aggressive. You're a cop / military man. You got to understand that. You understand the nature that this is just a shell of a person that you are. But underneath, you have such a giving, nurturing personality that I know this is not where you want to be in life. What is it you really want? And then go after that. He's like maybe 5, 6 years older than me. Whatever the case, I think he is 5, 6 years older than me. I told my friend who's older than me by 12 years, and I say the same thing too. Dude, you can't let your partner walk all over you like that. She's been taking your money and using it. It's your income. Set boundaries with her. Oh, there's going to be much more problems down the road. This is why women pick the weaker side to men, because they know how to use that and manipulate it. This is why I tell men all the time, be careful who you partner up to with. I know women like this too. I know women who make millions of dollars a year and like have men trying to hook up with them because of the money that they produce. You've got to be careful with that. I mean, I have friends who are like, I have a friend who's a millionaire. I have friends who are rich. I have friends, you know, who are doctors, lawyers, and all that, who drive nice cars or who, but they don't really do anything for me. I'm just like, okay, you have nice cars, you have all that money. I can tell you exactly how that's going to work in your business, but that's about it. Because a friend of mine, we hang out once in a while. I was telling him about my car issue, and he's like, oh, why don't you go out? Let's have a drink and talk about it. Like, I don't want to talk about anything. I just want to fix this stupid car because I have to pay $5,500 on parts that I'm not sure how I'm going to pay off right now. And I'm just like, I was kind of texting, but not sending it. Do you want to send me $5,500 to fix my parts? Didn't send it though. But I was just joking around. I'm like, but that was it. I'm telling you these things because I think it will benefit for anybody who's watching this to change the perspective. If you are married to in this situation, look at yourself. Look at yourself and stop blaming the child. Stop blaming your offspring for mistakes that you made. Because my mom has done this to me. She blamed me for everything, of every mistake that she made. It was someone else's fault. It was never about her taking only responsibility. It was my fault for me having my own kid when I was not ready. But it is what it is. And I'm taking responsibility for the outcome that I created. If my mom is not happy in the relationship that you're in, you have to understand the nature as to why you're in that relationship. This is why I am not married. Because I've seen multiple sides of marriages. The good, the bad, the ugly, without having to be married particularly. I've been with a person for 3-4 years. And so that was kind of quote unquote being like in a marriage. But we both know we're not ready in any of that. Because my parents are trying to force me down a path in marriage that I was not ready for at a young age. I'm like, no, that's not my own age. My mom got married at the age of 23. And they were trying to do the same thing to me, and I was not ready for that yet. You were trying to push things away so you don't deal with the bullshit that you created. And that's what a lot of people, narcissists, do. They don't like to face the consequences of their actions. They want to throw it under the rug, sweep it under the rug like it doesn't exist. So you gotta be very careful with that. Anyways, I'm gonna get going. I hope this video helps for those of you who are watching. Subscribe to my channel, push that notification bell if you find this helpful. And I will talk to you guys in my next video. Well, soon I am gonna get ready to go to work soon. Yeah, work.